Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another light novel review. I am the Rat, and this is The Rat's Nest. Today, we are back with peak fiction. Peak fiction. That's all that I can say that this is, because that's what it is. It is peak fiction in the truest sense of the word. Nothing is more peak than this. Mushoku Tensei, Volume 15. Obviously, a big volume, right? Obviously a big volume for Mushoku Tensei. Man, just everything about it is great. In terms of light novels that I've read, right? I've read some pretty good light novels over the years, right? Yeah, I like to think that I've perused some of the some pretty good books, right? Mushoku Tensei 15 is one of my favorites. I can very confidently say that it is absolutely one of my favorites. Just everything about it is just, it's peak, right? Best girl comes back. We get to see Eris too. Rudeus fights best girl. He fights Eris too, kind of, you know. that's how it goes. That's how it goes. But man, where even to start? But let's just get into it. So I'm gonna preface this by saying I'm going to kind of summarize, right? I could spend all day talking about like the journal, everything in the journal, everything old Deus went through, all of Rudeus's analyzing Rudeus's talks with Hitogami, analyzing Hitogami as a character and as the main villain, analyzing Rudeus as a character throughout this volume, analyzing Orsted as a character throughout this volume. But I'm going to try to keep this video under 30 minutes. I'm likely going to fail. I'm likely going to fail in that endeavor because I might get carried away. But I'm going to thoroughly try my best to give a solid review that doesn't last too long. If I go off on tangents, I apologize. I'll try to correct myself. But there is a lot to talk about and get into with this book. So how about we just get right into it, right? The most natural place to start is the journal. Right, that's the basis. That's the basic little thing. Like, okay, you think of Turning Point 4, you think of the journal, right? Technically, Turning Point 4 is Rudeus meeting with old Deus in that meeting, and that's what gave him the journal. Yada yada yada. I consider basically everything in this volume through Turning Point 4. Turning Point 4 is, to me, Rudeus meeting old Deus to the end of Volume 15. That's kind of how I view it. It's the same way that I view Turning Point 3, from Rudeus getting the letter to him getting back and marrying Roxy. I also want to give a spoiler warning. I will be discussing spoilers for the rest of Mushoku Tensei. I've read the entire web novel. I've read Old Dragon's Tale. I've read Jobless Oblige. I've read Redundancy. I've read it all, right? There's probably some side story that I've missed. I think I've read all of it. So just spoiler alert for them. I will be talking about this in the greater sense of everything. But yeah, so the journal, right? So this is Turning Point 4, right? You think, at least me personally, whenever I think of like Volume 14, right? I don't think of it as the Turning Point 4 volume. It technically is, right? Turning Point 4 is technically in Volume 14, the same way that Turning Point 3 is technically in Volume 11. I really think of Volume 12, though, as the Turning Point 3 volume. Turning Point 1 and 2 are easy enough. They're pretty self-contained. I guess, that's getting into an entire discussion on the turning points, which I probably will make a video over at some point because that seems very fun. But Volume 15 is like the Turning Point 4 volume, right? As I kind of mentioned last review, right? There is... Turning Point 4 is the big Mushoku Tensei moment, right? Rudeus meeting old Deus. Rudeus, getting the journal, realizing that Hitogami is the villain, and then ultimately fighting, losing to, and working for Orsted. And it's peak. It's peak fiction. Just everything we get introduced to. So let's talk about the journal some, shall we? Let's get into the journal. Everything in the journal is heartbreaking and devastating. I mean, need I say more, right? It's the big funny thing of, old Deus and his life and how awful it was. Just, wow. It's, met old Deus, got to see him last volume. This volume, we get to see his life. Seeing everything that he went through And, I read this in the web novel. This is my first time reading the light novel. Reading it again was just as hard, right? Because Rudeus has worked hard for his life that he has, right? And to see it just be destroyed in the way that it was. And I think it's interesting in that, obviously Hitogami himself orchestrated this, right? He's the one that, through his manipulation, whatever, got Roxy killed. And that led to the spiral. And ultimately, it's also Rudeus' fault at the same time. And that's part of the tragedy of it, is that, sure, Hitogami organized the whole thing, but Rudeus himself, to say, quote unquote, got him into it. After Roxy died, everything that Rudeus did was basically on him. It's hard. I'm not going to pretend like he didn't have it hard. He had it excruciatingly hard. He did everything he could to save Roxy. They got the God tier healing detoxification spell. They got that, Cliff died on that journey, and it wasn't enough. So he got his friend killed for nothing. Roxy died, right? And Roxy, obviously, being the one who took him outside, right, is a kind of pillar of support for him in this world, right? It's through her that he was able to conquer a lot of what he faced in his past life. It was because of her that he was able to come out of that. And so losing her, and Cliff dying for nothing, and trying his best, and he couldn't do it. He relapses, right? He becomes an alcoholic. He, ignores Sylphie. It leads to her dying too. It is absolutely devastating. But, to say I love the way it's written, right? I love the way that it's written because it feels so real, right? And that's what Rudeus says at the same time as he's reading the journal and he's kind of thinking through everything. He's like, I'm reading through this and, I'm feeling what he was feeling. Like, I can see myself, going down this path. Like, I'm just reading from the journal, but it's like I'm experiencing everything that he experienced. Because the way that it's written, I can see it. Because, Rudeus has been a character who's been very optimistic, right? He's a character who's worked hard, done his best job, right? But we've seen him, so, looking at Roxy dying, the only other example we have really is Paul's death. Bro was devastated, right? Bro was absolutely flabbergasted. That's so true. I mean, and, it wasn't just Paul's death, but it was also realizing that, his parents' death in the last world finally sinking in for him too, right? And just all three of them, and then realizing that he never really treated Paul like he thinks he should have, and then losing Zenith too, basically, because she doesn't have her memories back. Who saved him from that? Roxy, right? But now she's gone too. And I think that him, regressing into the state, there's only so much Sylphie can do, right? I think that she tried her best, but then ultimately, it's just everything is in character, I think. For Rudeus to go down this dark timeline. Other things that I love about it is getting to see Cliff and Zenoba, right? Obviously Cliff dies, but Cliff is willing then to die and to rob the Church of Millis for Rudeus' sake. And I think that, and obviously getting to see Zenoba stay with Rudeus throughout his entire life, right? Up until the point that he's killed by Millis later, really goes to show just how deep their friendship was. I love Cliff and Zenoba. They're two of my favorite characters in Mushoku Tensei. I can't wait to get into Volume 19 with everything with Zenoba. And, obviously everything with Cliff later on. I can't remember specific volumes off the top of my head, but just to have, I think that it's another thing of part of what I love about Mushoku Tensei and why I consider it a funny buzzword, perfect isekai. Is because, I always love it in, isekai stories. Whenever the protagonist has friends, right? I think so many, funny harem, isekai, whatever, they're just surrounded by women, right? And, Rudeus has 3 weed-smoking girlfriends. I'm not going to sit back here and deny it, right? But he also has 2 great friends in Cliff and Zenoba. And so just to get to see them in this alternate world and just how deep that friendship is, and how much they, care about Rudeus and are willing to sacrifice for him. And then, also seeing Rudeus know this and then knowing how much he'll do for them too. It means a lot. I really think that it's a great depiction of the friendship there. I think it's a great depiction of Aisha's devotion. Her coming back to Rudeus after everything. Say what you will about Aisha with the R's redundancy story. I'll make a video on that at some point. I really will. I wanna reread it and give my thoughts on it. But I love Aisha as a character, and I think that her coming back shows how much she really cares about Rudeus. And just getting to see all that. Obviously, the first magic armor. Rudeus never encounters Orsted again, but he does talk to Perugius. Just everything we saw in the future timeline was, it's great. It's so good, but also so devastating, right? Just the journal itself, getting to see this future, and then knowing that it has to be permitted, but how? And this is where we get into the rest of the book, right? Is Hitogami comes along, right? Rudeus meets back up with him, and Hitogami's pit. This first time we see Hitogami's quote-unquote true colors, right? The first time we could see he's been bested. He's absolutely been bested. Rudeus has messed with his plans. And this is where Hitogami kind of spills out a lot to him. Yeah, no, I was using you. In the future, your descendants come to kill me. And funny Mushoku Tensei sequel series win? Question mark? I should do a video on that. I got a lot of Mushoku Tensei videos that I want to do. I love this series. I really do. But getting to see Hitogami's true colors like that, and everything that he reveals to Rudeus, getting to see, because we get 2 meetings with Hitogami. If I'm forgetting a third, I dreadfully apologize. As if you've been watching the Mushoku Tensei episodes, the season review, you'll know there's no faker fan than I. But we get 2 Hitogami visits, and not going into detail because, like I said, I could analyze every single word of these conversations, right? Getting to see Hitogami finally step into his proper role as main series villain is really cool. I love Hitogami. I rank him in my top 5 characters. Just him as a villain is so threatening, right? This is, until he joins up with Orsted, this is the most vulnerable Rudeus is, right? I will be the first person to admit that I am not as studied up on the concept of fate and destiny in Mushoku Tensei as I would like to be. And that's something that I'm definitely going to be looking more into later on. Since I finished this, I really want to get updated onto all of that, as to how it works specifically in Mushoku Tensei. But Hitogami is in a position right now, before Rudeus is under the protection of the Dragon God, to really fuck with him, right? And this is before Rudeus knows all his rules. But just to see Hitogami's true colors come out, I think, is really cool. So back whenever I first read this, right, from the web novel, Hitogami the entire time, started off with the manga, then I read the web novel, and the light novel started being published in English, so obviously I bought that, and I'm still buying it. But the entire time before this, I was suspicious of Hitogami, right? Obviously, I was he's a suspicious character, right? Rudeus says that he's suspicious, but then as he kind of helps out Rudeus more, I kind of grew to trust him a little bit more. And then Rudeus went against his advice with Turning Point 3, and Paul died. And Hitogami was like, yeah, if you hadn't gone, you would have gotten together with Linnea and Persena, and Paul would still be alive, and Zenith would be back. That kind of thing. And I believed the guy, and maybe it's true, right? Maybe it that could be the case. Obviously, he wants to avoid Rudeus and Roxy getting together because funny Larak, right? But the way that Hitogami was written up to this point, I was suspicious of him, but like Rudeus, I began to trust him. At least a little bit. I was like, he has genuinely helped out Rudeus, right? Like all the time he's genuinely helped out Rudeus, even if some stuff had ulterior motive. I don't know why I just connected these dots. Obviously, Rudeus and Roxy just barely missing each other on the Demon Continent in Volume 4 because Rudeus went looking for Kishirika and then was in bed for a week. Hitogami probably did that to avoid them getting together. I just read that recently, looking into some stuff for Volume 15, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, how could I? I was like, yeah, that's probably exactly what it was. But the Hitogami reveal and getting to see his proper true colors, obviously, right? Bro is smart, right? Bro is conniving. You kind of knew Bro was conniving. Bro is always kind of plotting, like a tee-hee-hee kind of character. But here he's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck about you anymore, right? Like, you're stupid and I hate you and you ruined everything. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your entire family. I'm killing you. I don't care. My entire body says, get that fucking guy, right? And just to, man, for Hitogami to be in a place that Rudeus can't reach. And because of the journal, we know that Rudeus can't reach it, and Rudeus knows that he can't reach it. What can he do against Hitogami? He has to follow Hitogami's thing, because Hitogami can affect him. He cannot affect Hitogami. He knows this from the journal. Old Rudeus never got close, right? Funny power scale old Rudeus, right? But he never got close, right? The only person who can get close is Orsted, but whatever, right? So Hitogami is such a cool character, especially as presented here. Getting to see his true colors, and then later talking to Rudeus and giving him genuine advice on how to build the magic armor, right? Because obviously he's familiar with the fighting god armor. Can't wait, right? But obviously he's familiar with the fighting god armor, so they built Mark 1. I'll also admit I cannot remember exactly all the different suits. I know that there's Mark 0 and Mark 2 at least that Rudeus builds also, but Mark 1 ain't no slouch. We'll get to Mark 1. Obviously, to finish up the Hitogami section, he tells Rudeus, Rudeus is like, what can I do? And he's like, you could kill the dragon god for me. And he's like, huh? And thus starts Rudeus' pursuit into, I'm going to have to kill the dragon god. What other choice does he have, right? Rudeus can't oppose Hitogami. There's nothing he can do against him. Old Deus devoted his entire, waning years of his life to finding Hitogami, this, ultra powerful mage. Devoted the final years of his life to finding Hitogami, and he couldn't. There was no way for him to. What makes, Rudeus can't. He knows that he's not going to be able to. He has to at least try to fight the dragon god, right? He has to try. It's the only thing that he can do. So he goes to build the magic armor that was in there, get Cliff's and Noba's help, builds Mark 1. Magic armor is badass, right? I cannot, dude. Getting to see that animated in season 3, that's going to be insane, dude. He's got the shield. I forgot he put Paul's sword at the end of it. He has the magic absorption stone. I knew about the mini, dude. You don't forget the stone cannon minigun, right? All the things Rudeus has to go through just to get a semblance of Toki, dude. If Rudeus had Toki, it'd be over. It'd be over for everyone else. I mean, I'd say he surpassed Laplace. I don't know. That's a fun theoretical what if Rudeus had Toki. It's an interesting thing, but the fighting god armor is cool. We get to see a lot of Rudeus and his family during this section, right? Sylphie and Roxy obviously being nervous because, Rudeus being vague with them, right? He can't, what's he going to say, right? Oh yeah, my future self came from the past. He does tell them though, he's like, I'm going to have to fight someone strong. Like I'm going to have to fight someone strong soon. And then, the magic armor is completed, right? Rudeus talks to Nanahoshi about it, and it's kind of like, I'm gonna call in the favor, help me kill the dragon god. Nanahoshi obviously doesn't want to because she knows that Orsted is the second best character in the entire series after Rudeus, and she's like, no, you two can't fight. You're literally top 2 best characters in the series. And she eventually gives way. Getting to see Nanahoshi, I went on my Nanahoshi talk in Volume 14. I love Nanahoshi. Getting to see her again is always a plus. Getting to see Rudeus kind of think about, okay, how is he going to take on the dragon god? I really enjoyed this, right? All his strategizing here. Because this is the first time in Mushoku Tensei, the light novels, that we're getting to see... Yeah, I mean, we've seen funny sword god Galfarian, right? Or Galfalian. I think the official translation name is Phalian. maybe that's more correct. I'm so used to it being fairy, and I think I'm gonna keep calling him fairy, and until I'm corrected, right? Until my brain goes in and changes that. But this is the first time we're seeing someone properly strategize against a 7-world power. And not just any, the dragon god, right? One of the things that I love about Mushoku Tensei is the power scaling. You know me, huge power scaling guy, right? But I love how, end of series Rudeus is only the 7th great world power. He doesn't go higher than that. I love that. He just barely ekes in. That's awesome. Because, he's a man amongst gods, right? He's not even given the title of god. He's not the mage god or the magic god. I think his official title is Magic King Rudeus, which is a badass title, by the way. But, he's official. It's like Quagmire, right? He's Quagmire Rudeus. But I think he's like given, some people call him Magic King or Mage King or something. But getting to see Rudeus properly prep for a world power. And obviously, the reader, he never stood a chance against Orsted, right? But he did some serious damage. We'll talk about the fight, but to see him like, okay, I need poison, right? I need to, set this up specifically. I need to use my strongest magic. I'm going to, turn it into a thing. The strategy of how am I going to use the magic armor? What am I going to use the magic armor with? That kind of thing. How am I going to hurt him? It's really impressive. I think that it shows it shows his battle IQ, right? Like I said, there was no chance in hell of him beating Orsted, but he put up a damn good fight. So, before I talk about the fight itself, which I loved, you got to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the berserk in the room? What? Nuts berserk? That's crazy. Eris is back. Eris, best girl. I can't remember exactly what I said in my Volume 12 review because that was a long time ago at this point. And by a long time, I mean like 2 months. I guess 2 months is a long time. But my ranking of the wives is Sylphie's the best wife, Roxy is the second best wife, and Eris is the best husband, right? Eris, best girl in the entire series. That's pretty much not up for debate. The only runner-up is Nana Hoshi. So getting to see Eris again, obviously her coming back, her little redemption, right? I love everything about it. I love the letter that Rudeus sent, Isolde being the stupid woman. Isolde being stupid is like, this Rudeus character. And Nina's like, oh, well, he says, he suffered. And she's like, oh, I don't care. I don't care. No, I love Isolde. Isolde, Nina, and Eris make a fun pair there. But, I love Rudeus's letter. I love, where he's like, yeah, by the way, I'm going to go fight the dragon god. I might be dead whenever you get back, so just wanted to let you know. And Eris immediately goes off to help him. I really, really enjoyed everything with Eris. This volume was great. I'll get more into her at the end. But Rudeus versus Orsted. Like I said, I love the strategy of the fight. I love the writing of the fight. I cannot wait to see this fight animated. It's going to go incredibly hard. Like I've said, obviously Rudeus never stood a chance. Orsted is insane. He's literally, of the people still alive in the Mushoku Tensei verse, he is one of the 2 strongest, him and Hitogami. He is only weaker than all of the original gods, right, from Old Dragon's Tale. He's only weaker than them. In terms of Orsted, you cannot get better genealogy from Orsted because he's literally the first dragon god's son and the grandson of human god. Human god and Hitogami being 2 different people, obviously. That's another interesting thing here. Maybe it was at the end of last volume, calling Hitogami the god of men other than the man god. Interesting, right? I don't know exactly what human god versus Hitogami is in Japanese. If I had to guess, human god is Hitokami. But I'm just I only speak American. Petit amount of français. Je parle un petit français. Oui. It's awful. It's awful. So the god of men versus the man god. I'd kind of prefer if it, instead of the god of men, it was human god versus man god. If you're not going to use Hitogami. And I still stand by, I feel like it would have been cooler if the translation still used Hitogami. But I guess, Man God, that works. I think maybe you should have said human God, because that's the naming scheme. You got dragon god, demon god, beast god, ogre god. That kind of thing. I think that saying, oh, he's typically known as human god, but if you know him, you call him man god. And then I think that also works thematically, because he's not human god. He is a man god. We don't know exactly what Hitogami is, right? But that's my little side tangent, right? Oh, I'm not hitting under 30 minutes. We're not hitting under 30 minutes. You guys probably saw the runtime of this video and laughed whenever at the beginning I said I'm gonna try to keep it under 30 minutes. No, I should have known that wasn't happening. With it's peak fiction. But the fight itself, I love. Rudeus giving him a run for his money is really, really impressive. You could power scale Orsted all you want, right? Obviously, Rudeus surprises him and gets the upper hand that way. And Orsted, kind of wants to hold back, and so maybe he takes a couple more hits than he really needed to. I mean, the power of Mark Zero is absolutely insane. It's been so long since I've read the end of Mushoku Tensei, so I can't really remember Mark 2 versus Mark 0 versus Mark 1 and kind of what the effects of each one. I can't remember how Mark 1, if it would still scale into endgame Mushoku Tensei. But just the damage it did to Orsted and how all the different functions were described to have happened. I'd almost say Rudeus, endgame Rudeus, if he used that, could probably at least beat Gino. Rudeus no magic armor. No, he's getting absolutely clowned on by Gino. And also distance is a big thing with the sword god, whatever. You could question the Death God. We just don't really know much about the Death God. I can't wait to learn more. The Mushoku Tensei sequel series, GM, right? With C being the new Death God. I think he'll come back, but that's for another video on my thoughts on the Mushoku Tensei sequel series. I got so much stuff to do. I think that the Mark 1 is really, really powerful. Just considering the damage that it did to Orsted, right? Obviously, Orsted clowned on him. Who doesn't Orsted clown on? Orsted clowns on everyone in the verse. It's an honor that he had to draw the God Sword against Mark 1. I think that's a real testament. Obviously, at the end, we get to see Rudeus is like, Hitogami told me that my family would help you fight him. I have to kill you because of that. He's gonna kill everyone. And Eris steps in. I love the whole sequence where Elaine and Sylphie and Roxy and Eris are all there. I cannot wait to see all that animated. And then obviously Orsted extends an invitation to heal Rudeus if Rudeus works for him and helps him. I love it. I love it all. I love Orsted's character. Rest of the volume, right? We get a lot of stuff with Eris, where she kind of sticks around the house. Rudeus waits like a week because he's kind of embarrassed. He's like, oh, I fell for her all again. They have a heart-to-heart. They go out to fight. Rudeus doesn't fight back. They formally get together. They formally get married. Rudeus gets his third weed-smoking girlfriend, right? I love Eris. Is this a quote-unquote simpler romance? Sure. It's intentional, right? Eris is a quote-unquote simpler character. For this to be a simpler romance, it makes complete sense. Rudeus knows from the journal how much Eris still cares about him and has seen it now, and she saved him, and even he fell for her again, right? And, he was like, I might not love you as much as Sylphie or Roxy, but I'm willing to take you on as wife. Of course, he's like, eventually, he's like, oh, no, I love all three of my weed-smoking girlfriends equally, right? Love all of them equally. But just getting to see Eris come on, and the extra chapter with her was really sweet, too, to see her kind of, find her niche in the household, and, to see more of her character, right? To see that she, felt inadequate compared to Sylphie and Roxy. and she kind of found her place with helping Norn out. Big Norn guy, you know me, big Norn guy. But I really enjoyed getting to see the extra chapter. Obviously, you got the art of the 3 weed-smoking girlfriends together. That's kind of iconic, but it's very good. Obviously, the art slaps right here. Taka never misses. Volume 15 has some of the most iconic arts in Mushoku Tensei. It's great. It's really, really good. Another scene I want to talk about real quick before I get into the final stuff with Orsted, as I enjoyed before going to the fight, Rudeus talking with his family kind of about everything, and him telling him, yeah, I'm going to go get killed, basically. all the family stuff I kind of glazed over a little bit, but I really love everything with Rudeus' family. The characters just feel so genuine. The characters just feel so genuine and real in Mushoku Tensei. And, you know, that's all of Mushoku Tensei, right? But I just absolutely love everything to do with the characters, right? I think that they hit, they don't miss. I guess they never miss, huh? That is an old meme. I don't know why that came to mind. But they just feel so real. Like, you know, it doesn't feel like I'm reading a book. It feels like I'm like these are real people really interacting. And I do really, really enjoy it all, getting to see all of their interactions throughout this entire volume, right? I can't talk about everyone, but just I absolutely loved it. So, the final stuff with Orsted. This is where originally you get a lot of lore reveals and some misdirects, right? Obviously, Orsted can't fully trust Rudeus yet, which makes complete sense, right? But you get some basic stuff. Basically, you learn that Orsted is the 100th generation dragon god. You learn that techniques have been passed down to him. You also learn that he's reincarnated. You learn that Orsted is the son of the first dragon god who was killed by Hitagami. I think you also learn that Hitagami was responsible for the downfall of the ancient dragon folk race. You also learn that Laplace was not just the demon god, he's the technique god, and they were both originally the same person as the demonic dragon king and the second generation dragon god. Now, Laplace is one of my favorite characters in Mushoku Tensei. The concept of him is so cool, and I loved him in Old Dragon's Tale. So getting to see Laplace talked about is really, really cool. I'm also glad to see, I genuinely could not remember Orsted's perspective on Laplace. I'm glad to see that Orsted knows, right? I'm very glad to see that Orsted knows that Laplace was, you know, here to help him, right? To help him. He doesn't just think of Laplace as the dragon god. It's kind of sad that Perugius does. You also learn that Perugius is from the past and was reincarnated because you have the dragon cult folk method of reincarnation. I'm admittedly not as studied up on that as I wish I could be, and how that relates to specifically the other 5 dragon generals, and how they've kind of still been around, kind of not been around kind of thing. Obviously them dying in Old Dragon's Tale and coming back, and Dora not coming back. I'm admittedly not as familiar with that as I would like to be, and I will be looking into that more. But you get a ton of those lore reveals. You don't learn yet that Orsted is in a time loop. You don't learn that. You learn that Orsted can, you know, see the fates of people and that, you know, cause him to regenerate his magic very slowly. It's kind of true, right? Because he's seen everything. It's not technically a lie. He just doesn't say, like, it's kind of a lie. He doesn't tell Rudeus, and that's completely understandable. I think it's volume 17. He tells Rudeus that. But just some awesome reveals here. Getting to see Orsted in his new role, right? Where throughout this point in the series, Orsted has been this terrifying figure that almost killed Rudeus once, the dragon god, the second of the 7 great powers that Hitagami said could easily stomp the technique god. He could very easily stomp the technique god, right? That is absolutely happening. Technique god Laplace stands no chance against Orsted. That's just objective fact, right? Demon Dragon King Laplace doesn't stand a chance against Orsted. But just getting to see Orsted and getting to see his true colors, right? Kind of like what I talked about Hitagami, how they were built up, and then the subversion, the flipping of roles here. I absolutely love it. Getting to see that Orsted is a pretty chill guy, right? He's pretty, you know, he's serious about honoring his promise to Rudeus to protect his family. He's like, I'll draw a summoning circle for you. You know, get a good little beast, dude, you know, protect your family, all that. Like, okay, awesome, sweet. I love you. Kiss me on the lips, right? That kind of deal. But, you know, he's like, oh, you need money? Yeah, sure. Here's one of the 48 best swords in the entire world. Go sell it. And Rudeus is like, I don't think I can. He's like, okay, here's some magic stones. Sell these. You know, he's like, yeah, no, you could go see your family. You know, I'm not going to, you know, I have work for you to do, right? But that kind of thing. And, you know, specifically what I really like is Orsted being like, no, we're allies. Rudeus insisting like, no, I'm not going to misunderstand my place here, right? I'm not going to misunderstand my place. But I do really enjoy getting to see Orsted here. Orsted is my second favorite character, Mushoku Tensei, after Rudeus. Obviously, how can you not love Orsted? So getting to see him settle into his proper role in the story, right? And knowing from here on he's going to be a very regular player, I can't wait because I love Orsted. I love everything to do with Orsted. I love everything around Orsted. If Rudeus wasn't literally the best character ever written in fiction, Orsted would be number one, right? Oh my gosh! But no, I love everything with Orsted. All the cool reveals. I had forgotten. I don't know. Maybe it was clarified more in the light novel version versus the web novel. I mean, Rudeus straight up tells Orsted, you know, oh yeah, I was reincarnated, and Eris knows. Obviously, Rudeus never really tells his wives until the redundancy story, where at the end he does. And we don't really get to see the reaction. But Eris knew, and I think I kind of pseudo knew that Eris knew. I can't remember exactly how it was portrayed in the web novel. It's probably the exact same, and I'm just stupid. But getting to see that was very interesting, and how Rudeus, his whole talk with Orsted and everything, giving Orsted the journal, that was cool. Eris being there was fun as well. Everything was very cool, right? I probably forgot some of the reveals because there's a lot revealed here, right? But obviously sets the stage for volume 16, right? I can't remember exactly all that volume 16 covers. Since Orsted mentioned the summoning circle, I assume that this is when Leo comes in. Knowing that volume 17 is the funny Ariel becomes queen volume, I assume that it's kind of setting up for that. Maybe we get her talk with Perugius. If volume 17 is kind of more the action of her becoming queen. I can't remember. I'm really genuinely looking forward to it. Volume 16 is actually kind of special to me. In my room, I have 2 wall scrolls of 2 Mushoku Tensei covers. One is volume 12, volume 12 being one of my favorite volumes of Mushoku Tensei. I love it. I love Paul. He's my 3rd favorite character in Mushoku Tensei. He's peak fiction, right? He's absolutely great. The other one being volume 16, just because I really enjoy that cover. Speaking of volume 15's cover, oh no, volume 15 cover might be my favorite. I don't know. It's a really good cover. But I'm really looking forward to volume 16, which you should be able to expect next week, probably, as of the time that this goes up. Personally, right now, I'm reading Shield Hero volume 20, so I need to get through that and dig into volume 16. I absolutely love volume 15. I absolutely did not make my 30-minute mark, but 30, 37, 38 ain't too bad if I'm seeing that correctly. Of course, my eyesight is absolutely horrible because I spend all day reading tiny letters in tiny books, but I think that's what it says on my little funny recording software, my fancy recording software known as OBS. But yeah, no, Mushoku Tensei Volume 15, peak fiction. I'm looking forward to Volume 16. Well, if you're this far in the video, then obviously there is something you liked. So be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what your favorite part of this volume was. You could say any part of the volume, and it's completely respectable, honestly. There's not a bad part of this volume. It's all phenomenal. It's also my most favorite Mushoku Tensei, so it's great. So thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.